Hi, friends. So, if you're following the Australian politics at the moment, we have Anthony Albanese is the Labor leader of the opposition, basically leader, and he's been trying to show that he's different from the wannabe fascist Scott Morrison in the Australian government. The Scott Morrison government is wannabe fascist. They're really awful. And Anthony Albanese is trying to show that he's different, although he's not that much different. They're sort of neoliberals and they US lackeys. They just go on with whatever the US wants. And so anyway, I wanted to just share with you some of Albanese's speech where it's just so hypocritical, when we think about Julian Assange rotting in a UK Belmarsh prison, and yet this is how Albanese is framing the Labor Party, the opposition to this wannabe fascist Scott Morrison government, who don't care at all about free press, and the Labor government, I don't think they don't particularly care about free press except when it helps them. So this is what Albanese said in his speech in Parliament. One of the things he said, dissenters expose corruption and waste. They spark innovation. They start positive social change. We don't have to agree with every dissenting voice, but if we don't even let such voices be heard, our society, our economy, and our quality of life will stay trapped in a state that will make us poorer and less equal. For that reason, Labor stands with Australia's journalists and the Right to Know coalition in their united campaign to defend and strengthen press freedoms. Journalism is not a crime. Ding ding! It is essential to preserving our democracy. We don't need a culture of secrecy. We need a culture of disclosure. Protect whistleblowers, expand their protections and the public interest test. Reform freedom of information laws so they can't be flouted by a government. The current delays, obstacles, costs and exemptions make it easier for the government to hide information from the public. That is just not right. We must bring in stronger protections for public interest journalism. Don't prosecute journalists for doing their jobs. We need to enshrine in law the changes required to protect press freedom. 4. We must restore public accountability. It is vital to Labor's national renewal project that we restore the integrity of government. Okay, so that's Anthony Albanese, the opposition Labor leader to the Scott Morrison government in Australia. Now, that sort of shows you how compartmentalised and how hypocritical this government, this opposition and the government are. It shows how hypocritical this opposition is, the Labor opposition is, and the government, that here is Julian Assange, a publisher and a journalist. He is in UK Belmarsh prison and he could die there because he's so ill. And if they extradite him to the US, he will definitely die in prison there. He's facing 175 years under an antiquated Espionage Act, which was brought in the early 1900s. It was brought in to sort of criminalise the left, basically. So I guess it's still doing its job. And he's an Australian citizen, so the US doesn't really even have any say over what should happen to him, but our government here in Australia has just abandoned him, and that includes the Green Party, who are imperialists as well. They don't care about Julian Assange, except for maybe Scott Ludlam, who doesn't belong in the Green Party anymore.
I'm here with Scott Ludlam, former Senator Scott Ludlam from the Australian Greens. We are at the press conference of Kristen Hrafnsson. Can you tell me something about what people are still asking of you today, Scott, in relation to Julian Assange?
People are wanting to know what they can do, which is a real relief. It's great that I think the tide is turning, in a sense that the disinformation campaign that's been railing down on Julian's head and on his colleagues for the last nearly 10 years is starting to abate. People are starting to see through it, and now they realise what's at stake. The risk that Julian faces, the risk that we all face if journalism is conflated with espionage, as the US government keeps trying to do. People want to know what they can do. And so it's fantastic having Kristen here today at the Australian Press Club. So he's speaking to Australian journalists and to people who are interested, and to supporters, people who maybe want to hear directly, firsthand, what's at stake. And in a moment we're going to take Kristen up to Parliament House for a press conference and for a meeting with politicians who are supportive, maybe some who aren't so supportive. And one by one, people are coming back on side again. And we need that. We need the Australian government to step up so that, as they've done for many other Australians who found themselves in trouble overseas, your government has to have you back. They have to stand up for him, even though it's going to be inconvenient, even though it's going to upset the United States. The hell is the point of having a diplomatic relationship and an alliance with the United States if we can't step up for one of our own? So we're hoping to press that case later this afternoon, and I'm hoping that we see the momentum that's building continue to build.
Well, some of those MPs that are in the group, the support group, the group that with the aim of bringing Julian back to Australia, will they be up in Parliament today?
Yeah, Parliament is sitting today. It's the last sitting week of the year, and so people's time is pretty precious. People's diaries are crowded in the last sitting week of a year, but people are making time for Julian, and I think we will get a good turnout. The last time we were there, which was with Jen Robinson, one of Julian's lawyers, part of his legal team, we had a full house. And so I think having Kristen here today is just going to keep the momentum ticking along and keep it uppermost in people's minds.
So this is a cross-party group. Why is it that all branches of politics are interested in this transparency?
Well, the cross-party groups are one of the healthiest things in an otherwise pretty dysfunctional parliament, because people can leave their politics at the door. They know that if they're in that room, they're united by a particular issue, and so they're actually quite valuable. I was involved in a few of them when I was in the Senate, and it's good that there's now a support group for bringing Julian home, because that has Labor members, Green members, Independents, and some LNP members as well, including some quite high-profile ones. What that means is when they're sitting in that room, they close the door, they can speak freely about what it is that they can do collectively to get an Australian citizen back on Australian soil.
Yes. How much sway does that group actually have?
Well, people have sway individually inside the parliament within their own party rooms, and that's what makes it so valuable. So the Labor members, they go and sit in their caucus and they can raise issues with their leadership teams. Same for the Liberal National Party. They can raise issues with their membership, with their leadership teams about the growing concern and try to pull the political sting out of it. We don't want this to be a politicised issue. It's not owned by the Greens or the left or the right or the government or anybody. It's an issue of the integrity of journalism, the way we treat publishers, and ruling a very clear line under this argument that somehow journalism is espionage. It's not.
Yes, we need an accurate historical record, don't we?
If the country forgets its history, it's doomed to repeat it. Australia has an enormous historical amnesia with the existence of Aboriginal people and the fact that this is stolen ground that we're sitting on. The very last thing Australia needs is to be layering more layers of amnesia over the existing oldest layer. And so protecting journalists, protecting publishers, protecting the ability of people to hold power to account is absolutely fundamental, not just to our democracy, but to our freedom as individual human beings.
Scott Ludlam, thank you very much.
Great to chat.
Maybe Senator Wish Wilson, but what was he doing the last 8 years when Julian Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy and basically psychological torture there and under surveillance by the CIA via a Spanish security operation? I mean, where was his voice then? See, these people just, when it's expedient, when it is basically on the verge of when it's all too late, then they start making sounds. But I mean, he's from the Greens, but basically you get, basically the Greens are just imperialists now, like the US, like the Labor Party is. The Labor Party has endorsed Juan Guaido in Venezuela, a self-appointed person who's invited the US to invade Venezuela. This is what the Labor Party has endorsed. They'll probably endorse the overthrowing of the Evo Morales administration in Bolivia, even though there were fair elections and it was a US-backed right-wing coup that happened. I bet you that Albanese will endorse Julian Assange, she's a Christian fascist, who's self-appointed in Bolivia. I mean, this is what happens now in Australia. Basically, the Labor Party are in US lackeys. The coalition, you couldn't expect any better from them. And the Green Party, you certainly can't expect anything good from them anymore either. So this is where we're at now in Australia. And so none of these groups, except, and Rex Patrick actually, he said something. Rex Patrick is from Nick Xenophon's party. He actually said something about Julian Assange, but he's gone quiet on that. It's really appalling. And this silly Australian media doesn't realise that anybody, a journalist who upsets, embarrasses the US government and exposes war crimes or something to that effect, can expect the same thing. They could extradite any journalist from anywhere in the world, no matter what citizenship they have, if they embarrass the US government and expose political corruption like WikiLeaks did with Hillary Clinton via the Podesta emails. And that's one of the reasons she lost, because it exposed her corruption and that she was elevating Trump with a Pied Piper strategy. Her campaign was actually elevating Trump in a Pied Piper strategy because she was stupid enough to think she could beat him. These are all things that were exposed, and that's why Hillary Clinton said, can't you just drone the guy? That's what she said. And that's why the US is it's just all about revenge. Having their US empire exposed for the rotten to the core, warmongering, imperialist, hideous monster that it is. That's what WikiLeaks has done. And it doesn't matter if people like Julian Assange or don't like him. It's irrelevant. This is about press freedom. If he gets extradited to the US and he dies, he'll die in prison. They'll torture him and he'll die in prison 175 years. That's a death sentence. Or they could even execute him under those antiquated espionage laws. So this is what Anthony Albanese is supporting when he doesn't say anything about Julian Assange, when he doesn't protect an Australian publisher and journalist and whistleblower. And this is what the Coalition is supporting. This is what the Greens are supporting when they don't say anything about Julian Assange, and they're not saying anything about him. And it's likely that Julian Assange won't even make it to the US. He will die in Belmarsh prison because it's brutal. So, it's appalling. As I've said before, I've done numerous videos about Julian Assange. This is about press freedom and democracy. If you don't have a decent fourth estate, you don't have a democracy. And we don't have one really anymore in Australia. It's sort of, it's dictated to by the US, the government here. It's dictated to by the US and by corporations. And they feign interest in the public because they have to, but they really don't care at this point. And that's what it's like in a lot of Western countries all over the world now. The US has an oligarchy. It has an inverted totalitarian state, which is getting closer and closer to authoritarianism. And, we could end up that way too. Our Scott Morrison government is pushing more and more authoritarian views onto the public. Not, like criminalising protests. They're trying to do that. They're trying to do this here in Tasmania too. I mean, these are outrageous things that this government is doing in Australia. There's so many things. I won't go into it now. So many things that they're doing that are horrific, and it's just inching towards authoritarianism. Not even inching, moving quickly. Anyway, so that's all I wanted to say. That the Albanese-led Labor Party is no better really than when it comes to press freedom, and yet they're feigning care about press freedom when somebody who's basically a hero and is going to basically they've sacrificed their life in a way. He knew that Julian Assange knew that eventually that they were going to take revenge, but he kept on doing what he was doing, and he will probably die in Belmarsh prison or die in the US if they extradite him, and that's what they want. It's a slow murder, basically. They're trying to kill him. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Please subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. Click the notifications bell, otherwise you don't receive notifications when we drop a video. And when I drop a video, and please click the like button if you like the content. So thanks so much for watching. Please support Julian Assange in whatever way you can, including writing to him. Apparently they do get through at times, letters to Belmarsh. At least send your thanks for his courage, and please do what you can to push this government, push the Labor Party from the left, because they're in the middle and moving further to the right. So push them from the left if you're an Australian, or even if you're from another country. Write to them and push them from the left. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Till next time, bye for now.